Welcome back to Bible study. Again, we're reading the King James Version. We're still in the book of Genesis. We'll be going over chapter 20. God keeps his promises, and chapter 21, trusting God's plan. Narration by Ariel Serrano. Let's begin. Genesis 21. And Abraham journeyed from the thence toward the south country and dwelled between Kadesh and Shur, and sojourned in Gerar. Study notes. Abraham moves again, continuing his journey in the land. He settles for a time in Gerar. Even after great spiritual moments, life continues and new tests can come. Genesis 22. And Abraham said of Sarah his wife, "She is my sister." And Abimelech, king of Gerar, sent and took Sarah. Abraham repeats the same mistake he made earlier, saying Sarah is his sister. Fear leads him to trust his own plan instead of fully trusting God. Even strong believers can fall back into old weaknesses. Genesis 23. But God came to Abimelech in a dream by night and said to him, Behold, thou art but a dead man, for the woman which thou hast taken, for she is a man's wife. God intervenes directly to protect Sarah. Abimelech did not know she was married, but God still stops the situation. God protects his promises even when his people make mistakes. Genesis 24. But Abimelech had not come near her, and he said, Lord, wilt thou slay also a righteous nation? Abimelech had not touched Sarah, so he was innocent in this matter. He questions God, asking if he would destroy innocent people. This shows that even those outside Abraham's family could seek fairness and justice. Genesis 25. Said he not unto me, She is my sister? And she, even she herself said, He is my brother. In the integrity of my heart and the innocency of my hands have I done this. Abimelech explains that he acted based on what Abraham and Sarah told him. He claims he acted with a clear conscience. This shows how one person's fear can create trouble for others. Genesis 26. And God said unto him in a dream, Yeah, I know that thou didst this in the integrity of thy heart, for I also withheld thee from sinning against me. Therefore suffered I thee not to touch her. God acknowledges that Abimelech acted with a sincere heart. God reveals that he himself prevented Abimelech from sinning. This shows God's sovereignty. He can stop sin before it happens. Genesis 27. Now therefore restore the man his wife, for he is a prophet, and he shall pray for thee, and thou shalt live. And if thou restore her not, know thou that thou shalt surely die, thou, and all that are thine. God tells Abimelech to return Sarah to Abraham. This is the first time Abraham is called a prophet in the Bible. God says Abraham will pray for Abimelech so that he will live. Genesis 28. Therefore Abimelech rose early in the morning and called all his servants and told all these things in their ears. And the men were sore afraid. Abimelech acts quickly after hearing from God in the dream. He tells his servants what happened. They become very afraid because they realize God has warned them. Genesis 29. Then Abimelech called Abraham and said unto him, What hast thou done unto us? And what have I offended thee, that thou hast brought on me and on my kingdom a great sin? Thou hast done deeds unto me that ought not to be done. Abimelech confronts Abraham about the situation. He points out that Abraham's lie could have caused great sin in the kingdom. This moment shows that even faithful people like Abraham can make serious mistakes. Genesis 20:10. And Abimelech said unto Abraham, What sawest thou that thou hast done this thing? Abimelech asked Abraham why he did this. He wants to understand what Abraham was thinking. This question pushes Abraham to explain the fear behind his decision. Genesis 20:11. And Abraham said, Because I thou, surely the fear of God is not in this place, and they will slay me for my wife's sake. Abraham explains that he was afraid the people did not fear God. He believed they might kill him to take Sarah. Fear led Abraham to rely on deception instead of trusting God fully. Genesis 20:12. And yet indeed she is my sister. She is the daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother, and she became my wife. Abraham explains that Sarah was actually his half sister. He used a partial truth to hide the full truth. This reminds us that half truths can still lead to serious problems. Genesis 20:13. And it came to pass when God caused me to wander from my father's house that I said unto her, This is thy kindness which thou shalt shew unto me, and every place whither we shall come. Say of me, He is my brother. Abraham reveals that this was a plan they agreed on long ago. Whenever they traveled, Sarah would say Abraham was her brother. This shows how fear had shaped a habit in Abraham's life instead of full trust in God. Genesis 20:14. And Abimelech gave unto Abraham sheep and oxen and men servants and maidservants, and gave him unto Sarah his wife. Abimelech restores Sarah to Abraham and gives them gifts. This shows God's blessing even after a tense situation. God can turn difficult situations into blessings when people obey him. Genesis 20:15. And Abimelech said, Behold, my land is before thee. Dwell here, dwell where it pleaseth thee. Abimelech gives Abraham freedom to choose where to live. God blesses those who act with integrity and fear him. This shows God can provide peace and safety even after mistakes. Genesis 20:16. And unto Sarah he said, Behold, I have given thy brother 1,000 pieces of silver. Behold, he is to thee a covering of the eyes unto all that are with thee, and with all other. Thus she was reproved. Abimelech gives Sarah a gift of silver as a way to honor her and acknowledge the situation. The silver acts as a covering of the eyes, protecting her reputation. Even in awkward or tense situations, God can guide people to act honorably. Genesis 20:17. So Abraham prayed unto God, and God healed Abimelech and his wife and his maidservants, and they bore children. Abraham prays for Abimelech and his household after the incident. God represents by healing them and allowing them to have children. God's mercy and blessing can come through prayer, even for those outside his covenant people. Genesis 20:18. For the Lord had fast closed up all the wombs of the house of Abimelech because of Sarah, Abraham's wife. God had prevented Abimelech's household from having children because of the situation with Sarah. This shows God's protection over his covenant promises. Once Abraham prays, God restores what was blocked, demonstrating his responsiveness to intercession. Genesis 21:1. And the Lord visited Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did unto Sarah as he had spoken. God fulfills his promise to Abraham and Sarah. The word visited shows God's personal attention and care. This is a reminder that God always keeps his promises in his timing. Genesis 21:2. For Sarah conceived and bare Abraham a son in his old age at the set time of which God had spoken to him. Sarah finally becomes pregnant just as God promised. Abraham is very old, showing this birth is a miracle. It happened at the exact time God said, reminding us that God's timing is perfect. Genesis 21:3. And Abraham called the nation of his son that was born unto him, whom Sarah bare to him, Isaac. Abraham names his son Isaac, just as God instructed earlier. The name Isaac means laughter. The name reminds us that what once seemed impossible and even caused laughter of doubt now became a joyful reality. Genesis 21:4. And Abraham circumcised his son Isaac, being 8 days old, as God had commanded him. Abraham obeys God by circumcising Isaac on the 8th day. Circumcision was the sign of the covenant God made with Abraham. This shows Abraham's obedience to God's command. Genesis 21:5. And Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born unto him. Abraham is 100 years old when Isaac is born. This highlights how miraculous Isaac's birth is. God's promises can come true even when circumstances seem impossible. Genesis 21:6. And Sarah said, God had made me to laugh, so that all that hear will laugh with me. Sarah now laughs with joy, not doubt like before. God turned what once seemed impossible into a blessing. Others will also rejoice when they hear what God has done. Genesis 21:7. And she said, who would have said unto Abraham that Sarah should have given children suck, for I have borne him a son in his old age. Sarah reflects on how unbelievable this miracle once seemed. No one expected her to have a child at such an old age. This shows that God can do what people think is impossible. Genesis 21:8. And the child grew and was weaned, and Abraham made a great feast the same day that Isaac was weaned. Isaac grows and reaches the time when he is weaned, no longer nursing. Abraham celebrates this milestone with a great feast. This shows the joy and importance of Isaac, the promised child. Genesis 21:9. And Sarah saw the son of Hagar, the Egyptian, which she had borne unto Abraham, mocking. Sarah notices Ishmael, Hagar's son, mocking Isaac. This creates tension in the family. The moment begins the conflict that leads to Hagar and Ishmael being sent away. Genesis 21:10. Wherefore she said unto Abraham, cast out this bondwoman and her son, for the son of this bondwoman shall not be heir with my son, even with Isaac. Sarah tells Abraham to send Hagar and Ishmael away. She does not want Ishmael to share the inheritance with Isaac. This shows the serious conflict inside Abraham's household. Genesis 21:11. And the thing was very grievous in Abraham's sight because of his son. Abraham is deeply upset about the situation. Ishmael is still his son, so sending him away is painful. This shows Abraham's human struggle between family, love, and the difficult decision before him. Genesis 21:12. And God said unto Abraham, let it not be grievous in thy sight because of the lad, and because of thy bondwoman, and all that Sarah had said unto thee, hearken unto her voice, for in Isaac shall thy seed be called. God tells Abraham not to be distressed about the situation. God confirms that Isaac is the child through whom the covenant promise will continue. This reassures Abraham that God's plan is still moving forward. Genesis 21:13. And also of the son of the bondwoman will I make a nation, because he is thy seed. God promises that Ishmael will also become a nation. Even though Isaac is the child of the covenant, God still cares for Ishmael. This shows God's mercy and faithfulness to Abraham's family. Genesis 21:14. And Abraham rose up early in the morning and took bread and a bottle of water and gave it unto Hagar, putting it on her shoulder and the child, and sent her away. And she departed and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. Abraham obeys God and sends Hagar and Ishmael away. He gives them bread and water for their journey. Hagar and Ishmael wander into the wilderness of Beersheba, beginning a difficult moment where they will need God's help. Genesis 21:15. And the water was spent in the bottle, and she cast the child under one of the shrubs. Hagar runs out of water in the wilderness. She places Ishmael under a bush because the situation looks hopeless. This moment shows how desperate their situation becomes before God intervenes. Genesis 21:16. And she went and sat her down over against him a good way off, as it were a bow shot. For she said, Let me not see the death of the child. And she sat over against him and lifted up her voice and wept. Hagar moves a distance away because she cannot bear to watch her son die. She is overwhelmed with sorrow and begins to cry. This moment shows deep desperation just before God steps in to help. Genesis 21:17. And God heard the voice of the lad, and the angel of God called to Hagar out of heaven, and said unto her, What aileth thee, Hagar? Fear not, for God had heard the voice of the lad where he is. God hears the cry of Ishmael. The angel of God calls to Hagar from heaven and tells her not to be afraid. This shows that God sees and hears people even in the wilderness and in their hardest moments. Genesis 21:18. Arise, lift up the lad, and hold him in thine hands, for I will make him a great nation. God tells Hagar to take courage and to help her son up. God repeats his promise that Ishmael will become a great nation. Even when the situation looked hopeless, God still had a future plan for him. Genesis 21:19. And God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water, and she went and filled the bottle with water and gave the lad drink. God helps Hagar see a well of water that she had not noticed before. This shows that God provides what people need at the right time. The water saves Ishmael's life. Genesis 21:20. And God was with the lad, and he grew and dwelt in the wilderness and became an archer. God is present when Ishmael, guiding and protecting him. Ishmael grows up strong and skilled, becoming an archer. Even outside the promised line, through Isaac, God blesses and prospers his people. Genesis 21:21. And he dwelt in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took him a wife out of the land of Egypt. Ishmael settles in the wilderness of Paran. His mother finds him a wife from Egypt, beginning the formation of a family and nation. God continues his plan for Ishmael's descendants, fulfilling his promise. Genesis 21:22. And it came to pass at that time that Abimelech and Phishol, the chief of captain of his host, spake unto Abraham, saying, God is with thee in all that thou doest. Abimelech and his commander Phishol recognize God's blessings on Abraham. They acknowledge that God is guiding and protecting Abraham in everything he does. This shows that God's favor is visible even to outsiders. Genesis 21:23. Now therefore swear unto me here by God that thou wilt not deal falsely with me, nor with my son, nor with my son's son, But according to the kindness that I have done unto thee, thou shalt do unto me, and to the land wherein thou hast sojourned. Abimelech asked Abraham to make a binding oath of honesty and kindness. He wants protection for himself and his descendants. This shows the importance of making agreements that honor God and others. Genesis 21:24. And Abraham said, I will swear. Abraham agrees to Abimelech's request and makes a solemn oath. This demonstrates Abraham's integrity and faithfulness. Keeping promises and oaths is an important part of godly character. Genesis 21:25. And Abraham reproved Abimelech because of a well of water, which Abimelech's servants had violently taken away. Abraham confronts Abimelech about a well that had been taken by force. Even with peace between them, Abraham stands up for what is right. This shows the importance of addressing wrongdoing while maintaining integrity. Genesis 21:26. And Abimelech said, I wot not who had done this thing. Neither didst thou tell me, neither yet heard I of it, save today. Abimelech claims ignorance about the well being taken. He says neither Abraham nor anyone else had told him before. This shows that misunderstandings can happen, but honesty and communication are key to resolving conflicts. Genesis 21:27. And Abraham took sheep and oxen and gave them unto Abimelech, and the two of them made a covenant. Abraham gives Abimelech gifts of sheep and oxen as part of making peace. They establish a covenant, formalizing their agreement and friendship. This shows the importance of reconciliation and honoring agreements. Genesis 21:28. And Abraham set 7 ewe lambs of the flock by themselves. Abraham selects 7 lambs as a witness to the covenant. The number 7 often represents completeness or a formal agreement in the Bible. This act seals the covenant and serves as a lasting reminder of their promise. Genesis 21:29. And Abimelech said unto Abraham, what mean these 7 ewe lambs which thou hast set by themselves? Abimelech asked Abraham about the meaning of the 7 lambs. He seeks to understand the purpose behind Abraham's action. This shows that clear communication is important when making agreements. Genesis 21:30. And he said, for these 7 lambs shalt thou take off of my hand, that they may be a witness unto me that I have digged this well. Abraham explains that the 7 lambs are a witness to the well he dug. This formalizes ownership and settles any future disputes over the water source. It shows the importance of documenting agreements clearly to avoid conflict. Genesis 21:31. Therefore, that place was called Beersheba, because there they swear, both of them. The place is named Beersheba, which means well of the oath, or well of 7. The name commemorates the covenant between Abraham and Abimelech. Naming places can serve as a reminder of important events and agreements. Genesis 21:32. And they made a covenant at Beersheba, and Abimelech rose up and Fisho, the chief captain of his host, and they returned unto the land of the Philistines. Abraham and Abimelech finalized their covenant at Beersheba. Abimelech and his commander by Sheol return to their land, showing peace has been established. God's guidance allowed a peaceful resolution between two leaders. Genesis 21:33, and Abraham planted a grove in Beersheba and called there on the name of the Lord, the everlasting God. Abraham plants a grove as a sign of worship and remembrance. He calls on the Lord, the everlasting God, acknowledging God's eternal nature. This shows that acts of faith and worship often accompany moments of covenant and peace. Genesis 21:34. And Abraham sojourned into the Philistines' land many days. Abraham stays in the land of the Philistines for a long time. His peaceful covenant with Abimelech allows him to live securely. God's protection and guidance enable Abraham to dwell safely even among outsiders. And that concludes Bible study of Genesis chapter 20 and 21.